Alright guys, so can you see me? In today's video, we'll be reading Ecclesiastes and we'll just get straight into it. Alright, Ecclesiastes, everything is meaningless, chapter 1, verse 1. In the words of the teacher, the son of David, the king of Jerusalem, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless, everything is meaningless. What does a man gain from all his labor at which he toils under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever turning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already long ago. It was here before our time. There is no remembrance of men of old, and even those who are yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow. Wisdom is meaningless. Verse 12, the teacher was king over Israel in Jerusalem. I devoted myself to explore by wisdom all that is done under heaven. What a heavy burden God has laid on men. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. What is twisted cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. I thought to myself, look, I have grown and increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to understanding and wisdom, and also madness and folly. Then I learned that this too is chasing after the wind. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. And that last verse is really important. And so for this one, this is the words of the teacher of the son of David in Jerusalem. So these are the words of the teacher of David's son. King, and he's the king of Jerusalem. I think it's Paul, But it's either Saul or Paul, or I can't remember. But he's talking about how everything is meaningless. Everything that we'll do has already been done. Everything is under the sun has already been done. So it's kind of meaningless. And y'all, the last thing he verse is my favorite. I got it highlighted already. He says, verse 18 of chapter 1 in Ecclesiastes says, for with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. So keep that in mind if you ask God for, God, please give me more wisdom. Because that is so true. Like, the more wisdom you gain, the more sorrow you'll have. Like, you're going to suffer for that wisdom that you gain. Not in all cases, but most wisdom you get is from a learning experience. But yeah, that was chapter 1, and verse 2 starts. Well, chapter 2, verse 1 starts. I thought in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. So now he's saying even material things was meaningless. Laughter, I said, is foolish and does not pleasure accomplish. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was worthwhile for men to do under heaven during the few days of their lives. Verse 4 continues, I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself, planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit and trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves and flourishing trees. I brought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of the king's provinces. I acquired men and women singers and harem as well, the delights of the heart of man. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. All this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all of my work. So right now, he's talking about how I pleasure his heart, and he gave himself everything, and it still wasn't enough. Verse 11 of chapter 2 continues, "Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun." So every time he says he was chasing after the wind, have you ever tried to chase after the wind? It's meaningless. You can't grab it, intangible in a way. I don't know if that's the correct word for it, but chasing after the wind is pointless. And in the same way, fulfilling yourself with worldly things or trying to gain all this wisdom, it's meaningless as well, as what this man is saying. The next stanza goes, "Wisdom and folly are meaningless. Then I turned my thoughts to consider wisdom and also madness and folly. What more can the king's successor do than what has already been done? I saw that wisdom is better than folly. Just as light is better than darkness, a wise man has eyes in his head, while the fool walks in the darkness. But I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. Then I thought in my heart, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then do I gain by being wise?" When he says the fate of the fool will overtake him also, I think he means death. I think he means that death is promised to either one. You both will die one day, whether you're stupid or smart. "I said in my heart, this is too meaningless, for the wise man like the fool will not be long remembered." So he's talking about remember after death. "In days to come, both will be forgotten. Like the fool, the wise man too must die. Toil is meaningless." So I had hated my life because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. I hated all things I had toiled under the sun because I must leave them to the one who comes after me, and the one who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool. Yet he will have control over all the work into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. Before we go on to verse 20, what he's talking about there is he will gain all this knowledge, right? All this knowledge just to pass it on to the next person. And that person might not even fulfill what he started. This person, his son, his children could not be wise. They could be a fool. So everything that he did would be pointless. And then after he died, he won't even be remembered, whether he's a wise man or a fool. So he's saying everything that he does is no point to it because it's already been done anyway. So it's not even impressive. Verse 20 continues, "This too is meaningless. So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun. For a man may do this work with knowledge and skill, and then he must leave all he owns to someone who has not worked for it. This too is meaningless, and a great misfortune." Verse 22 goes, "What does a man get for all the toil and anxious striving with which he labors under the sun? All his days, his work and his pain is grief. Even at night, his mind does not rest. This too is meaningless. A man can do nothing better than to eat, drink, and find satisfaction in his work. This too I see is from the hand of God, for without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? To the man who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind." And we'll stop right there at chapter 3. We will read chapter 3 through 5 in the next video. But there's something that he's really touched on. So right now he's telling us everything is meaningless. He said toil is meaningless. He said wisdom and folly is meaningless. Wisdom is meaningless. And he started off as everything is meaningless. But then he says here in chapter 2, verse 24, he says, "A man could do nothing better than to eat, drink, and find satisfaction in his work." And then he goes on to say, "This too I see is from the hand of God, for without him who can eat or find enjoyment." So these things do have meaning, it seems. It says a man can do nothing but to eat, drink, and find satisfaction in his work. And so I think he'll probably touch on that in later. I know that he does, but he touches on this later on. But basically saying without God, who could find purpose? Without God, who could find enjoyment? Who could find pleasure? Without God, eating, everybody loves to eat. You have to eat before you die. You know what I'm saying? But that'll be the end of today's video. Let me move the camera. Hopefully you guys like the video. That will be the end of today's video. And we will finish Ecclesiastes. I can't even remember how many chapters it have in it. It has a few chapters. It has 12 chapters. Let me see. So yeah, it has 12 chapters, guys. Right now, we only read 2 chapters. Tomorrow, we'll read more and more chapters as we go. My phone has no space on it. But hopefully you guys like the video, and until next time, peace.